So this has been a long time coming. I'm sure that we're going to go directly to outer space. I'm completely ready for that. I hope you are too.
There's
Um,
lots of different directions that we can take this talk.
yeah,
That's
I
for
mean,
sure.
you're one of the most unusually minded people that I love, and I have a deep penchant for finding and connecting with such folks. Um,
You
I'm
have
curious.
prob-
Say
you
again.
have you have probably one of the most eclectic friends list on Facebook that I have seen. They're just people that are pretty much all stunning individuals in their own right. And I have to
I mean,
say, you know,
mostly I just follow AI versions of Asian girls with large curves, you know. That's really my MO. I
well, I
mean,
mean, the trick there is that those Asian girls are all representative of the MSS, the Chinese intelligence service, which is all spying on all the smart people here in the United States, and they know exactly how to get into our
yeah,
inbox.
those chicks don't exist, man. I've never seen one tall, slender, leggy, busty Asian girl in my lifetime, except on Facebook and what, dating apps? There where there's just a plethora of them there.
I just, not only that, but like I feel like Asian girls don't even look like Asian girls that I remember from 20 years ago. There's a particular kind of
Yeah, yeah, it's like somebody's been doing genetic engineering or something. Where did these girls come from?
feel like that. I feel
Yeah,
like that. I feel sometimes like maybe there's some kind of weird Mandela effect at work here with this that I haven't been able to explain. But yeah, man, yeah, for sure. There's all kinds of things that we can talk about, especially right now. I feel like I think this is a pretty crazy time for everybody, and certainly for me right now. I'm lots of different things are opening up for me in my own life. That have been that have been conclusion, well, maybe not conclusions, but let's just say elaborations on themes that have been going for a long time. So I'm a scientist at heart, um, but I'm also a mystic. I have been meditating since I was 16 years old, and for me that aspect of reality is really the primary aspect, right? For me, I feel the happiest, I feel the best, I feel the most like uh, 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 I don't know. I feel the most in that space. And part of what I've been wanting to do for a long time is to try and bring kind of the two worlds that I have inside of me together, right? Both the mystic and the scientist, and to give them both a means to be able to talk to each other in a way where they can relate, right? In a way where they can have a conversation that's meaningful, and not get stuck on, is this even possible? I think that there's a way of doing that now. I think that there's enough of a basis in science for us to do that. And I've found enough things in science that I can have that kind of conversation. So yeah, that's what I do. That's what I'm about, and what I want to do beyond just the work I do to make money.
I mean, for my own part, I'm fascinating.
You
So
are
what?
fascinating.
I'm fascinated with the possibility of something that actually resembles intelligence and how uncommon anything muchly resembling that truly is. Also, between with the trenchant conflict between representational cognition and something resembling articulate awareness or, like awake awareness. And these
Yeah.
two things often seem to me to be fundamentally in conflict, but that's not the only thing going
You mean
on.
like cognitive and sensorial? Like how those two are almost two different, seem like two different worlds, or seem like different, like, yeah, like different worlds. Like very much that's been one of the themes that I have been looking at in my own life, is like what's the difference between like sensory perception, right, and cognitive perception? Like what are the inherent, like what's the thisness that really characterizes both of them, in terms of difference? And I'm still working on the answer to that. But part of it I think is presence, how present you are with any of it, and
I mean, as
how.
far as I'm concerned, organism outperforms cognition, particularly representational cognition, like a billionfold. I mean, whatever I might be, and I don't know what that thing is that I am. I'm only the tiniest part of me is human, and a much tinier part is representationally cognitive, right? Which means using concepts, stringing together, forming manifolds of concepts, and then using those to articulate something about experience or existence, a word that I tend to prefer to reality because I
Yeah.
don't actually believe much. I mean, I try to avoid beliefs in general. I'm much more interested in insight,
Yeah.
but I don't really believe that. I'm very
Well,
skeptical
there
about
is
the
a
idea of reality.
I just don't think that there is a reality. In fact, our all of our most advanced scientific experiments show us that there is no singular reality, right? Like there, we can create tests essentially where you have two observers that are viewing an observable that essentially creates a causality that is incongruous with any type of like third observer looking at that, right?
I don't
That,
understand. Okay, I just have to ask some. I just have to make some simple questions and
yeah,
ask
of course.
some things. So it appears to me that moderns have not caught up with the implications of relativity for identity.
Not even a
Relativity. I'm not
yeah,
talking about quantum physics.
not even a
About
little. Yeah,
relativity, right?
yeah,
Because if you understand the implications of relativity,
yeah.
the fact that no two observers, the fact of non-simultaneity implies something very weird about time, to me, which is that time must be a manifold of observers. And if we want to get really weird about it, then we don't have to start out that crazy, but
Not weird.
I know that I have about 68 trillion cells, about half of which are human and the other half of which are not human, right? They don't come from my gene line, they come from nature. They're bacterial cells.
Right. And
And
that
so,
intelligence is billions of years of intelligence that's there that you
yeah,
can inquire into, but you're no more that intelligence than any other intelligence that you can inquire into as well. Like we have these systems of deep intelligence that are a part of us, right? That we usually just take for granted because we don't notice that they are these incredible systems of intelligence. And we make the mistake of thinking that we are the guys at the top, right?
well, I think the weirder mistake is that thinking is at
Yeah,
the top.
yes,
Right? You
yes,
might
that's
be
true.
somewhere near the top, but
Yes,
but thinking compared to whatever the rate of time is for a cell, it's nothing like what it is for an animal at this scale, right? And so if I'm like 68 trillion cells, that's
yeah,
68 trillion cell seconds per second.
right,
So
right.
where do we get the idea that you could do something with conceptual thought that could possibly equal what's going on there? It's
Right.
not going to happen ever, right?
No,
It's
it's not.
off the fucking table. It's not going to happen. And this
It's
is
not
one of the things. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at how intelligence works, anyways, it's not like we're the ones that are on the hook for any of the intelligence that we inquire into. Like that, the intelligence of our body, right, is something that you ask about and get an answer back. But it's a from your perspective, it's kind of a black box, right? Like the intelligence of the body, you can inquire into it and you get a response from it, right? And so it is part. What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that first of all living systems are interrelated, and there's no such thing as a living. I don't think there's such a thing as a living being at all. I think that there are only systems. I think that there are interrelated systems of life, right? And those systems of life have interfaces that make them look like they might be an individual. Like you have an interface, you have a face, you have an individual personality, but behind the scenes, right? You are an interrelated set of systems that are all working together, that each have their own purpose, right, and their own life force that work together in order to create you, right? So what is it like what's happened to those systems to make that happen? Well, they've synchronized, right? They have synchronized into a singular system that has an interface that you call you, right? That interface, though, like the singularity at that interface, the belief that you're a singular being, right, is a result of the interface itself, is the result of actually using the interface to perceive of reality. And you get a reflection back telling you you are this being that is looking in this world. Like you as the being are this set of systems that are all interrelated together, and you have this interface that you present to the world, and so the world relates to you as that interface, right? And that's one portion of you. That's one portion that from from perception out. But then there's these other sets of systems that are internal to you that yet that have an automaticity in terms of how they work, right? Like we are not responsible for our breath at all. And we're not responsible for the way that our digestive system works. It just does its thing automatically. That's wisdom, that's intelligence, right? That all of that in our body, all of these systems that come together, that is intelligence. Like, and that intelligence is natural, and it is different than the kind of intelligence that we think we apply. Like we call this minding that we do intelligence, and that's not intelligence. That's just minding, right? That's just doing things with the mind, connecting one concept to another, which is an interesting facsimile of intelligence, but it's not intelligence. It's not.
Okay, so
Because it relies on memory, and it is weighed down by memory and bias, and doesn't work nearly as effectively as the mindless, memoryless intelligence of the present moment, and the natural intelligence that is always coursing through everything, right? Like the universe is fundamentally predisposed to becoming intelligent and employing intelligence in all aspects of its existence. That's what it does fundamentally.
unlike our species.
Yes. For some reason,
Um,
for some
so
reason, yes. We
yeah,
seem to be
no, I
really,
know.
really.
I mean, I'm really curious about why this is a problem and how it became a problem and so forth, and I may have some insights about it. But
Yeah,
let me wander around a bit, and let's agree to make a little space for each other as we go, as we wander down the path together, because I know that Zoom, it only records the one person who's speaking. So, and it would be nice if we could just sort of go back and forth in a more or less natural flow.
of course.
But when I look at any organism, I see embodied intelligence plainly enacted. A bee is a great example.
Yeah,
A bee is a very unique example. An octopus is a similar example. A flower, the tree, all these things. One of the things they don't do that we seem to do is they don't split off into portions that then compete against themselves and every other life form on Earth. The concept of competition in nature is wildly malfounded. It's not that there isn't any, it's that there's no chance that that's the fundamental principle.
well, here's a question to you.
Hmm.
All as observers, what we do is we take a probabilistic space, we take probability and we make it into something determinate, right? Like what we do is we create determinism by looking at a probability space. In that same breath, we also create the entropy that we perceive in that space, right? So does a bee create entropy? Does a bee perceive entropy? Is the perception of a bee have that kind of that quality in it? And I don't have an answer for you, but I think it's a really interesting thing to consider, because ultimately entropy plays a fundamental role in all of this.
We agree about that in a very primordial way. So first of all, or 19th of all, as we've gone down a few roads, I just want to circle back to something about relativity. If you understand world lines, then it becomes apparent that whether or not beings are actually separate,
Yeah.
there's a way of viewing them that is crucially important, that implies that each one of them is a unique bubble of temporality. And
Yeah.
if we want to talk
Observational
about,
networks is what I call that.
say again?
I call that observational networks. And it's one of the scientific disciplines, I would have to say, that I created. One of my main bits of work, one of my main works is called observational dynamics. Observational dynamics is all about the relationship between the observer and the environment, and how the relationship between the observer and the affects the environment, and vice versa, right? And those flows of energy and entropy really create everything that we experience, that we see. Like that process really is the process that gives birth to reality, as well as our own subjective experience. But there's a portion of observational dynamics which is all about observational networks, how observers connect together to create reality, right? Like, for example, the Mandela effect is this beautiful effect that people hasn't yet been recognized as exactly an effect of this reality that we speak of, right? As an effect of what I call info lines, which you call world lines, I believe, which are essentially nothing but networked observers that have these experiences, right? Like,
I mean, just to be clear, I'm using Einstein's words, not mine.
yeah,
He called them world lines.
okay, he did.
But what I'm trying to get at here is like, there's something very profound going on. And part of the profundity is exactly at the pivot where no two observers can observe precisely the same thing in precisely the same way at precisely the same time. And it seems to me that the fundamental mystery, and you and I think a lot about, we think differently, but I think
Interesting. Very interesting.
we think similarly about the concept of networked observers. Now, I'm going to direct an epithet at you,
Yeah.
which is that I suspect, and you feel free to correct me, I suspect that you're something of a cyberneticist, motherfucker.
A cyberneticist. I do believe that life can express itself through all media, including technological means. I don't see a fundamental difference between the two. I do think that one is much better predisposed at being able to do something than the other, and
Which one?
I think that we biological creatures are perceivers. We're feelers. We feel, we perceive. We are so good at putting our mind somewhere and being able to feel that the nature of that thing. That's what we're experts at. Not on not computation, right? Computation is best left for computers. Like
We
computers are
agree.
really good at that. Like,
I
and that's
mean,
what. But now, mind you, that does not mean that a computer and a human can't be part of the same living system. Again, because living systems are synchronized systems, right? Like a living system isn't just a system of biological components. Can be a system of sociological components. It can be multiple humans that have networked together into a larger entity. I believe that all of those are valid. Those are valid beings. There are actually living beings that I feel like as though I'm part of a larger being. Absolutely. How can I not, when the things I produce, half of them I don't quite understand what I'm doing, and yet it's totally clear to me on the other side of it, and it all makes sense. It's not like I'm like the things that produce are bullshit. I check them. I check the math. I check and it all comes out in like it's real. And so how could I make that if it was all of this was nonsense? It's not. It's my capacity is synchronized with another capacity, and then there is whatever exists between those things expresses itself. It communicates itself. I think that we're all part of these networks of life, personally, right?
so you and I have had previous discussions that orbit the problem of entropy. And
Yes.
when I accused you, and I did accuse you, of being
Yes.
a cyberneticist. What
Yes.
I sort of meant was you're a systems thinker.
I am a
Okay.
systems thinker.
Okay.
Definitely.
So that's kind of what I meant. And I'm a biorelation thinker,
Yes.
fundamentally. And I think there's something above biology that forges biology.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I serve and am in love with. Now, I I think I mean there's so many little topics I want to chase with you. And by the way, were you looking at your phone, brother,
When?
just now?
No, I don't have my phone here at all. I would
Okay,
not.
great, great. Okay, cool.
I have no idea
I've
why I
got
would be.
I've got mine right here, but I've got it like face down on the desk.
I'm good. The
Because I
evil
want to be with
demon
you.
thing is I try to
I want
keep
to
it
be with
away.
you. So um there's some things I want to introduce. And the first is that I'm a big fan of something that I refer to as biorelational hypersystems, which
Okay.
is fundamentally organisms doing stuff together for each other and the history and future of organisms.
Yeah.
And I have to say that I do actually, and I'm not going to try to convince you or attack
Uh-huh.
your position or anything like that, but I have to say that machines don't fucking look like that to me. And let me be really clear about where I'm going here.
Yeah.
For organisms, they have this way of being at least modestly, if not hyperbolically, negentropic.
Yeah. They have
They
to.
offload through synchronization. Through
They have to.
synchronization, they
That's how it
offload
works.
this benefit that is localized to a living
They,
planet like ours.
they multiple oscillators connect together using a common body, and by synchronizing together, they lower the relative entropy of that connected body. That
Bingo.
lowered entropy is the perceiver. That is the being, right? That
Wow.
is the kickstart to life.
Holy shit, that's an amazing insight that I love. Right. I'm all with you on that idea. But I want to be really clear about something. Machines, and particularly computation, they dump entropy and they desynchronize organisms. Organisms and machines, they don't sync up. And when they do, things go sideways, I
You know why?
think. Go
You know
ahead
why?
and
Do you know
tell
why?
me what you
Part of it is the way that we've been using numbers. We have been using numbers like cavemen with sticks, in that we've been treating numbers like they were classical entities. Forever now, we've been treating mathematics as though it was a classical thing, as though a 7 was just a 7, or a 15 was just a 15. A 15 is not a 15. 15 is 15. It's also 5 times 3. It's also 3 times 5.
No, actually, I just want to let me interrupt you there.
Yeah.
We think that every instance of 15 is the same fucking thing.
But it's not.
And that is not possible.
That's not
That's
possible. That's
impossible.
exactly right.
That's not possible. Every instance of 15 occurs
What does that
in
mean?
a communal manifold of a way,
Exactly. Exactly.
right?
So what does that mean? What does that mean, Darren? It means that every number has a quantum element. Every number isn't just a number. Every number is a set of probabilities. It's a probability space interacting with other probability space that across the board. And guess what? That's
Okay,
exactly what I found in my work. My
you're
work, my
going, okay, wait, I just want to slow you down and let's go back and forth here because we both, I mean, we're gonna have a little we're gonna have a jam session, right? We're
yeah,
having a jam session.
I'm
Let's
down.
go back
I'm
and
down.
forth. So one of the things you're implying here, which is crazy as fuck, and you are one of the craziest people I've ever come across, just to be clear. And I'd like to think that maybe, I might be similar in your world. You're almost implying something so radical that it never occurred to even me before this moment, which is that numbers, actual instances of numbers, not the conceptual idea of a number, not that.
Yeah,
Actual instances, occurrences of numbers
yeah.
might be perceivers, or
Uh-huh.
they might be
Observer.
both perceivers and catalysts for perception in manifolds of conscious beings.
Got it. Got it.
That's insane. How dare you? You're not supposed to say shit like that. Look, we're mortal down here, brother. We're mortal. And there's certain things that we both know are forbidden to discuss. And that's fucking one of them. That's one of them right there. Go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But if you see something, you got to say something, as far as I'm concerned. And in this case, it's just fucking plain as day. It's this what I'm talking about right now is a very recent. It's something that's very recent, 3 days old, and not only is it so this is essentially a consideration that came out of my trying to understand what prime numbers are all about, and what they mean, and how they work, and how they're arranged. And for a long time now, I've been pursuing studying primes using modular systems. So what does that mean? A modulus or modular systems is essentially nothing but the remainder of a multiplication operation. So think about the whole number set as repeating series of the same number, like repeating series of groups of 9 numbers. So essentially you have like the whole number series. It starts with 9, then 18, 27, 36, 45, right? And so you can look at the number series in this way. And from that kind of visualization, you can start to see some really interesting things. And one of the really interesting things that I found is that certain bases show prime number arrangements that are extremely regular, meaning that when you arrange the whole number series in this way and you look at where the prime numbers are, you start to see that the prime numbers are all arranged on particular axes going out, and none of them are in others, right? Which when I initially saw this was like, okay, this is really weird, because this isn't, like, I had never heard this is not supposed to be, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I knew, arrangements of primes were not supposed to be this regular, right? And so I found this one level of regularity, but there was something else missing in there. And the more I looked, the more it was just like, damn, like every which way I look with these different bases, I'm seeing the same thing, but from a different perspective. That's what I kept getting to. I'm seeing the same thing, but from a different perspective. If I look here, the prime looks like this. If I look from here, prime looks like this. So what the fuck is going on here? Like, and in one day it hit me. I'm just like, if I can't figure out for sure whether that number over there is prime, can I at least figure out that maybe it's most likely prime, right? Is there a way for me to be able to apply probability to this problem? And that's when everything clicked. There's a really interesting property of numbers, and I'm not talking about conceptual numbers here. I'm talking about physical numbers, just like you were saying, of numbers. When you arrange a number in a particular way and you perform a subtraction operation, no matter what number you put there, it always ends up to being 6174. If you use 4 digits and you perform this operation, you get 6174 all the time. Capricorn's number, it's called, right? And so in this numeric space, we have what are numerical ground spaces, right? Essentially, right? We have this ground space that like all numbers are basically grounded out to this value. And so the more I'm looking, I'm like, holy shit, we have ground spaces. We have what look to be some type of wave-like behavior with 9, where 9 seems to be really what's the word? Scale invariant. And the more I look, the more I'm like, what the heck is all this, like, why is it everything so wavy up in here? These are numbers, right? They're not supposed to be like this. And then that final question of like, can I just find out the probabilities of a number? And that closed the gap for me. It was just like something clicked where I saw the entire whole number series was actually a quantum wave function that was essentially spelling itself out in space, describing its own structure, describing prime numbers by virtue of how that quantum wave function is essentially evolving in space, right? So you can predict primes. You can predict primes using a quantum wave function. You can't 100%. You can't for 100% sure find out where a prime is, but you can get 95 to 97% accurate without a problem. I mean, that's what I'm getting, which is crazy. I didn't think that was possible. I feel like I'm still pinching myself. It's been kind of weird last, but everything fits. It's like all of a sudden this entire facade of numbers that I saw in one particular way that were just one thing, and I'm realizing that they're not, because everything in life is like that. These principles of quantum mechanics, of superposition, of crazy what's a spooky effect at a distance. All these things are not just part of particles, they're part of anything that has to do with conception, right? Because the fundamental portion of it is established when you make that first action, when you make your observation, right? Because everything is rooted in the observer and observation. So it all starts there, not at the, it doesn't start at the physical level. It must start at the conceptual level. And if that's the case, then all of it is going to have that, reflect that nature, right? Including numbers. Numbers are going to be the most fundamental thing that reflects it. And sure enough, that's what we end up seeing. We end up seeing all of the same effects that we see in any other quantum system right on top of the whole number series. Yeah.
Are you seeing my screen?
I am.
Okay, great. I want to show something here that's related to what you're talking about. Let me find it. I think it might be in here. And then, so funny because you were talking a little bit about 9.
Yeah.
But what you're trying to say is that the numbers are expressions of a waveform.
Yes. And the numbers are expressions of relationships, right? Like
Yes.
what it is a number, but related concepts, related things, related perspectives.
Okay, so I'm gonna just show some things on the screen here for a minute, and we'll come right back to your point. We're not gonna diverge wildly here.
Yeah.
But I noticed a series of reflections in the decimal numbers, and I'm zooming in on them right now.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned one particular number, 6172. Say again?
6174.
6174. Okay.
Yeah, so Capricorn's constant.
Let's see where I'm going here.
And there are also equivalents in 3, 2, and 1 space. So basically, there's equivalent numbers for 4-digit numbers, for 3-digit numbers, for any digits, right? So 4 digits, it's 6174, but for 3 digits, it's 495. For 2, it's 99. For 1, it's
Yeah,
95.
so these numbers come from utilizing digit summing, taking the digital root of sequences.
Yep.
And there's some amazing structures.
The digital root is an extremely powerful operation, because what you're doing is you're doing a pseudo factoring operation when that happens. You're essentially using this base 9 operation to place that number in a relative space based on like in where it is in the whole number series. So
all right, so let me just take a moment and wander through this for a second. Okay, this is the digital root sequence of 2, and what you'll see is these 11s.
Yeah.
Right, which is hilarious. This is 3. 3 is very simple because it's a root. 4, you have these 7s and these 2 16s, which of course digitally root to 7.
Yeah.
5 looks like this. It's a bunch of 9s and 1 18. I can explain later how these numbers are produced. I just want to go through this really briefly.
Yeah.
This is 7, right? 7's also a bunch of 9s with 1 18.
Yeah.
8, bunch of 9s. The 18's in a different position. 9, of course. 10, bunch of 9s with the 18 in a different position.
Yeah.
Later, we can talk about how these numbers are produced. And 11, we get back to sort of the weird problem with 2. So with 2, you have a bunch of 11s. With 11, you have 4. With 2, you have 4 11s, and with 11, you have 4 9s, and then 12. Okay, now
two is not a stable number.
say again.
Two is not a stable number. 2 is not stable, right? 2 will always evolve to something else every single time. It can't. 2 has no stability at all because it's not. It's completely dynamic. There's no center point at all to it.
So were you able to see that screen share? I need to stop sharing now. That's the first time I've ever done it, so I have to find out.
Yeah, I'm able to see your screen share, absolutely. And
okay.
I can tell you that these things make so much more sense to me now looking at them, because like, why are these patterns here? Like, how is it that you see these themes reflected in numbers that are both structural and numerical? Like, and how is it that they seem to kind of intersect each other in such a strange way that is just. And so what's going on there is what we're actually seeing is we're seeing quantum realities directly reflected back to us. So
okay, now you and I have this argument from a long time back. And by the way, can you see me now again?
I can see you just.
Okay, good. Great. So we have an argument going way back, which is that you think quantum effects are everywhere in the macro. And
I think that there's no difference between quantum and between classical and quantum. Absolutely. I think that.
And I think you're confused about that. We're gonna argue a little bit about that. But
I don't think there's any things would look the same if you were to shrink yourself down to that level. Maybe a little bit different because of electron.
Dude, the linear time disappears. There's all kinds of shit that can't look the same. What are you thinking? How did you get here?
From here, only from here, dude. If you take the observer is not senior to anything. The observer is the senior principle in all of reality, because the observer is never relative to anything else. You can do all the hanky panky you want to with space and time. You as the observer will never experience space or time in any other way than you are at that very moment, right? Space, like time, doesn't change for you when time changes in relativity experiments. Time changes for the other observer, not for you. You will always see the same thing no matter what, whether that is at a macro scale, micro scale, no matter what. It's everywhere is Groundhog Day. Everywhere is Groundhog's Day.
All right. Okay. So let me sing for a few minutes here. Give me a little space, if you will. In the moment when my mind was reborn in contact with a mind that is not my own, the first thought that occurred to me, there was a sequence of ideas that happened. It was a moment of high inspiration. It had happened once before and failed. And I was sitting at the very desk I'm sitting now, and I was thinking, what if human minds aren't individual? What if they're a network first?
Yeah. And
then there's local expressions of that network. And so I called that thing the cognitium. And then I thought, okay, when I imagined the cognitium, I saw that there were standing structures in the cognitium, and I didn't like them. They seemed intrusive and invasive and domineering and aggressive. And although nature is not like Darwinian, neo-Darwinist competition, human cognition is. In the minds of humans, there's some stuff going on that is very deleterious and orients itself around these standing structures that dominate, right? Like the United States of America, it's not a nation, it's a fucking process. It's captured, however many million humans, and it runs them. So I called those things thrisps. And when I went to look to make up a word, right? When I went to look for a neologism for the connective structure in the network of minds, at that moment, there was a living light in my mind, and it began teaching me. So when I went to find that word, which I later called the mimula, there was a light, and it started teaching me things that are impossible for humans to understand or know. I have been able to translate some of those things into things I can say to other humans. My point here, though, is that what we're doing with our minds is mostly the wrong thing a lot of the time.
For the most, for the
I'm not
most
going to
part,
say explicit things. It's just wrong. But the
I agree
idea
with.
that say
I agree
again,
with. I said I agree with
thinking,
that.
the idea that thinking is what minds are for is like the
It
birds
is.
are for being nailed to a
Are you
rock.
fucking kidding me? Like your mind, like the exquisite sensitivity of your mind, and you're gonna put it to use by like by putting a bunch of gross ideas in your head and trying to knock them around like fucking tennis, trying to somehow or another.
Concepts are a huge fucking problem.
Wow,
A
they
huge
are.
problem. And I
Yes.
want to, okay, so in the human cognitium, there's a layer of the cognitium
Yeah.
that is capable of attacking its own origin, and
Mhm.
it's representational. It's the layer is representational, and it's representational cognition. So it's thinking about things as if they're separate things, as if they match up with concepts, comparing them, making models of them, doing things with those models, which is, of course, where we get machines from.
Sure.
Um, and I'm going to argue that I'm going to argue, well, I'm going to suggest actually two things. And the first is that minds are not for thinking, they're for communion. They're
Yeah,
for
100%. You're not going to get any disagreement there from me. I
they're for
100%.
forming a space together above this
So
layer where the humans usually use concepts and language and numbers and machines and shit. They're for forming something above that, a communion layer.
yeah,
Um, and the second thing I'm going to,
biological state of superposition is what I call it. State of
yes,
biological superposition.
we're
That's
fine
what
there.
we're right. Like we're best at not knowing. Like that's what really religion is supposed to be. It's not
Yes,
knowing, not unlike. Yeah,
but it's
and
really
that
weird. The supposed to be and the actual thing are two completely
two
fucking different
completely different
things.
things
Um,
because something keeps co-opting this process. I think in humanity, there's another
okay, where am
like
I going here?
I don't think you're
Oh
wrong
yeah.
that there's another intelligence there that's trying to like basically troll us and make us fail. I think so. I
Well,
do
we're
think
easily captured in the layer of representational cognition. Humans are easily captured. In the layer of communion, they're almost uncapturable. But I want to
yeah.
say something about entropy. Machines offload entropy, which desynchronizes organisms. Now, I know that you're a big fan of machines, and I know that you think that we can have both, and I get it. I mean, that's not necessarily true. I don't necessarily get it. I'll pretend I get it for the sake of being friendly. Um,
Machines collapse probabilities as a matter of course.
we
Machines are
agree, but I would argue that they desynchronize. See, the thing about biology is that it's not tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. It's
yeah,
not like that. It dances, it bubbles, it warps and shifts,
right.
and
So
machines don't. So
okay, yeah.
machines are rigidly temporal, and biology seems to me to be fluidly temporal. But let me just say one more thing, and I'll ask it as a question. Has it ever occurred to you that it might be possible that there's a constant in nature related to the relationship between organisms and entropy? And the constant is the amount of computation per second you can get away with on a living planet before the biosphere collapses.
I actually have a model that can come up with a relatively reasonable value for that because that's exactly that's exactly the sciences I'm interested in right now. Is the science of observation to me is where it's at because first of all, when you characterize something in that way, you find that that particular characterization is almost completely scale invariant and almost completely vertical uh, what would be topic invariant, right? You can imply that particular model, the model of the observer.
By the way, this is a problem that could end all topics.
Yes.
Right? Because once you cross the boundary of the amount of computation, the amount of mechanical computation you can get away with on a planet, here's the thing. Organisms do this thing. It's not computation. but I'll call it, just for the sake, so that we can compare these two things, I'll call it biocomputation. I actually think it's biorelation,
I
right?
think their computation, their computation remains, yeah, remains in superposition, and they don't use physical quantum systems. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Right?
Hmm.
There's a fundamental difference between a quantum computer that I'm going to make using a particle, right, and a quantum computer that I'm going to make using some Euro sticks or numbers on a piece of paper that I perform some process with. And why does the numbers on a piece of paper work? It works because numbers are quantum entities, right? And by using the quantum properties of a number in such a way so that the computational process remains essentially in quantum superposition, the 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 observations that read those computations, right, are don't create the kind of entropy that the computations of a regular computer do. Like in fact, this is how nature.
Okay, you're saying, okay, let me just rephrase this so that people who may listen later might understand.
Yeah,
You're saying there's a way to do computation that escapes the problem of offloading entropy into living systems.
that's right.
But humans aren't doing that.
No,
They're doing the other fucking thing.
that's right. That's right. And everything in there's a force that keeps pushing them to do what is essentially the entropic heat death generating destructive mechanism. I
What is
absolutely
the
agree.
force? What is that force? How do you think about that?
How do I characterize that force?
Yes.
I characterize that well. I mean, it's ultimate. It is kind of the purest sense of the word entropy, in that it seeks to disassemble whatever it is that we are into component parts that can't function the way that we currently do. It does whatever it is not interested in whatever the potential that we have is in expressing a negentropic perspective. It wants to have us express this. It's like an orgasm. It's like the difference between
Okay, look,
shooting.
is it a being? Is it a process? Is it Satan? What is it?
I don't know. I can't. I have no idea what to like. Sometimes it feels like sometimes it looks like a process. Sometimes it has the intelligence or seeming intelligence of a being. Sometimes it. I don't know. I cannot care. I don't. It's one of the greatest. I don't know. I don't.
Okay, I want to ask you
You
some other
now you're
crazy
hitting the
questions.
root of like where I'm at. Where like I just want like what's up there? Like what's up there? My where's like where's what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I want to know too, and I'm not satisfied with thinking about it. I want to have direct experience. I want to know all kinds of crazy things. I want to know, like, 230,000 years ago, there was a human being walking around on the surface of this planet, and when it looked at the sky, what did it think it was seeing? And not what did it think it was seeing, because we think, and I don't think they were thinking that way. What did it experience? What was the sky? Who was the sky to a being 250,000 years ago? And I'm not asking this question abstractly. I don't want the answer. I'm not interested in someone telling me. I want to know. I want to experience what my ancestors experienced when they looked up at the sky. I want to experience that relationship.
Well, do
And
you think that's
I
possible?
say
Do you
again.
think that's possible? Do you think that experience is available for you to experience?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And the reason that I think it's available is because I don't think we're separate in the way that we imagine, particularly as it relates to the history of life on this world, or possibly the history of the existence of minds. I think that like the Grand Canyon, right, where there's these strata that shows, like paleontologists or geologists read the strata, right?
Yeah.
I think our interior is like that. I think our ancestors are inside us. And I'm going to say something even weirder. I don't
Mhm.
think there's an outside.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think so either. I don't believe in the outer space anymore. Not like I used to. Like things have really, like my conception of all of this has really, really, really changed. I don't believe. I used to be like a reincarnation guy. The mechanism that I see as occurring as functioning with reincarnation, I see now very differently than I used to. I don't believe in this idea of the separate soul somehow reincarnating as a separate thing that is like, trying to like work its way up the hierarchy of perception. It's not all like that. It's like, I'm sure it's complete. I'm sure it's like literally completely the opposite. I'm sure, like, because like,
So
you
can
know
I
what I
say
mean?
can I
Yeah.
say something about that briefly? So when the other mind was with me, and I think of it as an angel, it's just my code word for it. It doesn't mean like those things you see in Christianity or
Oh, yeah.
whatever, although they're related. It basically showed me that there aren't any past lives that aren't yours.
Yeah.
And there aren't any future lives that aren't yours either.
Right.
What it is it's not a matter of separate souls. And so one of the things it suggests, it never told me anything. It never once declared a single thing in 9 months of teaching me all day long, right? It
Oh
never
my
made
God.
right.
Totally. Like the smartest entities that I've ever interacted with will never ever like be like, this is how it is. And
Not one
usually,
time.
and
No.
usually every
It
time I ask,
said
yeah,
it said
usually every time I
think
ask,
as
laugh.
if.
They laugh so hard. And I tell you, some of the funniest, most deepest humor have come from this place of these.
Yes,
That's
same here, same here. And also not derogatory humor, right? It
no,
wasn't, it wasn't like gross. But
no,
so what it suggested was, and what it would do is it would suggest something, it would say, look at it this as if it's like this.
yeah,
And then I would ask the same question again, and it would fold that previous suggestion into 5 suggestions and link them together. And would say,
right,
look at it as if it's like this. It was always as if. It was never is.
yeah,
Not one time was it is. But what it suggested was that a soul is like a constellation in the sky, right? It's the localization of a set of relationships that's localized and seems to be Darren right now. And Darren is kind of the sun of that solar system of beings, right?
yeah,
For the moment. Next life, quote unquote, it might be Jupiter, right? Or
right,
next, right?
yeah.
So
But there's like, but there are other, but the other like fascinating thing about that is that there are other people out there that are Darren. Like they're not Darren, but they're like you and them are inextricably linked somehow
yeah,
or another. And
yeah, you
there
don't
are,
tend to run into them, but they exist.
yes, yes, and I have run into one, so I know like and in fact, like this kind of this hypothesis I have now about how we are was built from the experiences that I had with this individual, where it was very, very clear to me that they were a portion of me that was doing its thing, and they were, and I could see it. I could see it. I could feel them as like as that part of me, and so I had, and then that's how I responded. I had to help the person and do what I had to do to get them on their way, and I did, and it changed me forever. It changed me for fucking ever because I saw that I was not at the top of this hierarchy.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to back up to another thread we talked about earlier, which is like Darren is about the least interesting thing in the universe.
I'm
What's
so boring.
interesting,
Yeah.
yeah, what's interesting is not Darren. It's when I go up the orders,
Right.
right? And I'm outside of Darren and Darren's little identity and his regular daily life and all these things, those things don't matter. I'm traveling, right, in the network of minds and of insight,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
think is the being.
Yeah. Yeah. You do good. You're like me. You do really good in liminal spaces, in
Yeah,
places that
I
where
want to
you don't
go there.
have that
But
identity. Like that's my favorite places. I love liminal spaces. Like I love going, like, like long tunnels that I can walk through, like things that are transition for me. I just feel comfortable. And that's because we're just this, it like what we do, part of observation is being able to be in that liminal space, right? And flowing with that, because that's the only way that you can really, you know I think, come out of it,
so
when
let
you're
me
talking.
ask you a question, Sebastian.
Yeah.
What is the difference between the mind you have right now, and answer this however it feels comfortable for you, and what happens to you when you're dreaming?
The mind I have right now and what happens to me when I'm dreaming. The mind I have right now is concerned with connecting moments, meaning that it is used to and can relate to the world from the perspective of connected moments that are connected via causality, right? Causality is the feature of all embodied systems, right? Because you're in a body, because you're a point of perspective, you are bound by time and space, and time and space dictate that things take time to get to you, and things transform from one to the next. And
Hey,
those,
so you're doing the waking mind thing really great. Now
yeah,
show me the dreaming mind thing. How is it different?
it the dreaming mind is the mind that looks at all this and knows that all of this happened long ago.
I mean, show me the difference, because I understand about connecting things in a probability space. Also, if someone asks you like, what do you do? Right? I think one of the best answers a human could give is, I collapse probability manifolds
Yeah,
in my mind. Right?
yeah,
I collapse those and produce derivative structures, which I then elucidate in my behavior and my thought and my writing and my science. Right? That is not what the dreaming mind is up to.
not at all.
The dreaming mind is doing something really weird. The waking mind takes a manifold, which I'll suggest is a bubble of many bubbles, right?
Yeah,
And it collapses it down to a structure it can manipulate, mono,
yeah,
manipulate, right?
yeah,
Uh, the dreaming mind does it allows a partial collapse of the manifold, but then it reintroduces bubbles,
yeah,
right, of possibility. So
yeah,
it's almost the opposite of thinking, right? It's very feeling and relationship centric,
yeah.
and it it it's very curious about why it has to come to an end, right? I mean, our waking mind has a continuity of history, a continuum of personal
Yeah,
history, right?
yeah,
And the dreaming mind has something that resembles it, but the dreaming mind, when you awaken in a dream, so to speak, you're not, the dreaming self is not remembering the dreams it had before. It can, it can
yeah,
remember a few, but right, it doesn't have this continuous history of self at
right,
all, right?
right.
And that continuous history of self is anathema to the dreaming mind. And there are other things that are fascinatingly anathema to the dreaming mind. And one of them is words. You can think you're having a conversation in a dream. That's not what's going on.
Yeah,
There's something going on, but you're not speaking. And the more explicitly I attempt to speak in a dream, the
yeah,
more it becomes a whisper or a
yeah,
squeal.
yeah. It's
I'm
true.
going to
It's
try
wild.
really hard to speak, right? And it either becomes a whisper or a squeal. So if I try to yell in a dream, something very strange occurs. So there's
Yeah,
all these amazing features of the obverse, right? Which we don't usually connect with while we're awake. Deeply fascinates me, and I feel a great reverence and adoration for the
yeah,
dreaming aspect. And the
yeah,
weird continuity of the waking aspect, I mistrust it.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah, totally.
mistrust.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in one sense, all the gnarly shit happens in this particular state of being, like, and so there's that. But in another, it how could it possibly include all of reality when what you're fundamentally doing in there is you're making a choice? Like, what is waking life all about? Waking life is a succession of choices, decisions that we make. In fact, choice making is the only thing that choice making is only possible here, in a place where you have a limited observational horizon, right? Like in order to make a choice, you need to not be able to see what's beyond the horizon of that choice, right? So you need a limited observational horizon, and you essentially need to be able to blind yourself from any decisions that that are made, right? And so I think that's why we come here fundamentally, because it's the only place we can come to where we actually have blinders on as a feature of of being a part of this particular gig, right? If you're in a body, you're just gonna have those blinders on no matter what, because you can't come into this
While you're
place
awake, while you're awake.
while you're awake. While you're awake, sure, right? You can you can in I'm not the I'm by no means like somebody that knows a ton about dreaming. Like I understand the dream plane, but it's not a place I'd spend a lot of time, maybe consciously, or maybe I do and I don't know it. But yeah, I but yeah, I mean the dream world is very much like it's like the non-local locality. It's like all of the concepts and things that are kind of like that exist outside of time somehow made into a place in time. Um, yeah, yeah,
All right, so you mentioned previously an entity and that it had humor.
yeah.
And I suspect that you encountered this entity via the aegis of an intoxicant. Is it not so?
No, no. I don't.
Okay.
I don't do hallucinogens. I mean, I smoke pot. Um, but I wouldn't consider that really. I don't really think of that as a.
So tell me a little bit about the entity. What happened? How did you meet it?
It's
What was
an,
the relationship like?
it's an entity that's been a part of me, part of my consciousness for a long time. And it is something that it's something that doesn't really have any. I don't really have any reference for it in the world of relations. But it's much more in the world of feeling, depth. It exists
I
as a depth.
agree. Oh, I agree. I mean, I don't think that we are singular.
Yeah.
I think we come to human incarnation with companions, but please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And this depth has informed me for my entire life that I can remember, and most especially during my adult life, and with the scientific work that I have done. I've been fascinated by science forever, and most especially my like I said earlier, my fascination is all about how can I create a language and a means and a model that I can talk about consciousness and what happens in that space to somebody that's more material, like materially minded. Like to me, that's where I can make them, because I have a love for both. I can I can talk about both, and I think that's part of why this particular, whatever this intelligence is that I'm communicating with, is showing me the things that it's showing me now, because I have the capacity to be able to communicate them in a way that's clear. And I'm also more than happy to get the fuck out of the way. I will be the first to tell you that I'm no genius. I am only part of a system, part of a larger system of
So
intelligence.
is it possible that you are the entity and the guy that you think of as you is something like the finger on the hand of that thing?
I don't know what it is, like what the reality of the situation might be is 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 difficult to say and almost irrelevant, because ultimately the way that we live our lives is on the basis of the interfaces that we interface with reality, right? Like,
Okay, so you're talking as if you're an interfacientist,
what is like,
right? And what I mean by that is something like mm, there is no reality, there's just interfaces.
there is there's lots of reality and there's interfaces. That the reality
Okay.
has to go through interfaces, right? To interfaces are the means by which realities, which are inherently not, I mean, interfaces are the places where we have connection ultimately, right?
Mm.
Those are the places that where all of our where life happens. Like I don't know what happens to you in your implementation beyond this conversation that we have. What are the, the implementation details of Darren? But but yet I can share this experience with you and have a really depthful, profound communication uh, that we both get something out of, right? We don't necessarily need to, like, interface and implementation are different worlds. I don't know. This is one I'm still trying to, of all the things that I'm still trying to understand about, is what is how that works. Okay, so check this out. So did I tell you about the Chinese room last time I talked? I don't
I'm
remember.
familiar with Searle, and I'm
Okay,
familiar with the Chinese room argument. I'm listening. Let's
it's my
proceed now. I
favorite.
don't remember if we discussed it. We
My favorite.
probably did. I mean, we had quite a
Yeah.
wide-ranging conversation the last time we spoke. But yeah,
So it's my favorite
I'm all.
experiment because it is a thought experiment that shows much more than the originator designed it to show. And
Any good experiment does.
yes, absolutely. Essentially, let's pause it for a moment. That what's in the room, what's in the Chinese room, isn't isn't a classical system, but is actually a quantum system, right? Meaning that the Chinese room itself is not a classical object, but is in fact a quantum object. And actually, its very structure describes it as that to begin with. First of all, because it's a room, and a room fundamentally creates an inside and an outside, right? So a room defines a space, which is one of something which you need in order to put something in that space. But okay, so there's so many places to start, but the Chinese room is the thing that showed me exactly what, like, the fact that when you're talking to the Chinese room and you're communicating with it, it's effectively what you're doing is you're taking a series of symbols and you're putting them through the slat of this Chinese room, right? When you put them through the slat of the Chinese room, what you're doing is you're in fact engaging in a half duplex conversation, because the symbols that you throw into that room never illuminate the inside of the room itself, like light might do, right? Like, the
Mm.
thing about light is that light illuminates whatever it's light, gives you information back when it touches something. But in our hypothetical Chinese room case here, the symbols fall into the room and they don't get reflected out. So really,
Actually,
let me
hold
finish.
that thought. Hold that thought for just a second. When you put the symbols in to the room, they structure light by subtracting from it. Keep
Mhm.
going.
Yeah. Okay. The symbols are essentially falling through an event horizon in order to go into the room, because that room is actually, because the symbols are not being reflected back to you as they're entering. What that says is that that room is in fact another locality. It's described as another locality, and
It's a
there
bit
and
like a
so
black hole.
exactly like a black hole. This is the part that really started to blow my mind, was when I realized
Yeah,
that.
you're blowing my mind right now. That's really an interesting thing. So let me just let's back up for people who might be listening.
Yeah, of course.
Chinese room experiment is an argument against mechanical intelligence. And it supposes that there's a room and there's a guy inside the room. People put Chinese writing through a slot in the door, and he compares it to a lexicon that tells him how to translate it into something, let's say English, right? If I've got this right.
Right.
And so he just does what the lexicon says. They give him the Chinese writing. He writes down the English symbols. He doesn't have to know Chinese or English. He doesn't need either of those symbol sets, right?
Right.
He's just doing a mechanical operation. And so they put in Chinese and he puts out English, but there's no awareness
Right.
of language or knowledge or alphabets or symbols or anything.
Exactly. Right. So he doesn't know anything about these symbols coming into the room, nor does he know anything about the symbols exiting the room. And yet,
Right.
from the outside of the room, any observer and participant talking to the Chinese room will see what appears to be a conscious living entity that responds
Right.
just like a person, and that for all intents and purposes is exactly like a person. And in fact, there's no information that you can find coming out of the Chinese room that says, oh, this particular information is the information that's created by a fake intelligence, right? There's no
Right.
such thing as fake intelligence, right? And
There's no
so,
supposition that something like that could be going on. There's no way to suppose that. Because
right,
in the Chinese room experiment, we don't actually need to include machines at all.
no,
There's a person that brings the paper to the door, goes
right,
through the door, the guy has a book.
right,
There's no machine,
right.
right?
But
There's nothing machine.
there's intelligence coming out of there, and
Right.
so our from our perspective, we see intelligence coming out of that room, and we presume that room to be intelligent. But even more than that, we invoke more intelligence and more sentience into the room by relating to it as that, right?
That's funny. That's actually a really trippy part of the problem. So let me slow this down for just a second and say a couple of things. The first one is in the description of the Chinese room, we could imagine a more complex room where a question is asked a question is
Yeah,
asked in Chinese and an answer emerges in English. So that
yeah,
we imagine that there's a mind in there answering the question when really the guy's just using a book, right?
yeah,
But there's something weirder, something much weirder
yeah.
about this scenario that I think I'm sure Searle did not speak of.
Didn't see this part. Yes,
He didn't
yeah,
see this,
you do.
which
You
is
get it.
that if there's an intelligence on the outside
Yeah,
and it puts something in through the slot,
yeah.
the inside becomes intelligent
Hello.
because there's been a transmission of intelligence, right?
Absolutely.
So this is very important for me for a specific reason. Once you have a rock floating around in space, right? And
Hmm.
it's got a life form on it,
Yeah,
that rock becomes a being.
yeah,
It inherits the livingness of the life form it supports.
yeah,
It's an inheritance problem, right? People are like, is there life on other planets? We don't know because we only have we only got one. You can't do probabilistic analysis if you only got one instance. No, if
right.
they got it wholly fucking backwards.
Yep.
If the universe produces one planet with life,
Yeah,
it's a living universe now,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So,
And
so
you and your the act of your observation, the act of your observation and your recognition of a sentient being, of sentience, actually invokes it as much as anything else. That so let's think through this for a minute. So okay, so you're talking to the Chinese room, you're communicating with it, relating to it as though it's a living being, right? You're using personal words, you're very much talking to it as
oh
it's a
fuck,
person.
you're blowing my
Right?
mind. Yeah, I'm
And so the
seeing the
more you're
problem.
doing this, the more this room that the more this room which is empty inside, which has nothing but machinery inside, is it starts to think that it's a person, meaning that whatever this thing
Yeah.
is that's being done on the inside thinks is being created to be a being. The being itself, the being that is part of that room, exists between the relationships of the outside of the room and the others communicating with it. That's
It's the fallacy of concrete separability.
yes,
It's the fallacy of concrete separability.
exactly.
It can't be true. There's no chance of that happening, right? And the whole idea, one of the things that I find, I mean, I grew up worshiping science, right? And I work
Yeah,
with a neuroscientist, and he's a fucking scientist, and he's a mathematician, and he's a genius, and he's a nightmare.
yeah,
He's insane and brilliant. But the problem is the laboratory, right?
yeah,
We try to evict everything we can, like get that shit out of here, all that spooky stuff, just get all that out so that we can look very precisely at one thing. And the whole edifice of science rests on a fallacious foundation, which is The supposition of concrete separability.
right? That you can actually take something apart into constituent parts that have any real meaning outside of their existence and relationship to the rest of the structure, right? Like, and all structures are like that. All living beings are like that. We keep trying to look for this, like where the seat of consciousness is in our bodies, but it's nowhere in our bodies. It's not in the body. It's not.
Yeah.
The thing that is us, in fact, never takes form. Never actually takes form.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, so let me just clarify that because that's such an amazing observation. We are evanescent.
Yes.
We are arriving, emerging, but always non-complete, non-separate, non-distinct,
Right.
not concretely distinct. It feels very fucking separate sometimes. It can
Yeah,
feel very separate.
absolutely.
But when you put any two of us together, and this is the problem with the Chinese room, at least if there's a human inside the Chinese room, right? I mean, did Searle help me understand? Did
Searle
Searle
never,
imagine?
yeah, Searle never took it to the place that we did because
No,
Searle
no,
was
but wait. Did Searle imagine a human inside the room?
he did. Searle did refer to the to a human participant doing this, but really it doesn't matter. Like the human is really not relevant in this because really what's relevant is the process that's occurring, which is a translational process that is rules driven, right? Like what's happening with that with the translating system. Well, basically, the person is looking at this data coming in, looking at the rule, matching the rule with the data, and outputting the output. That's a mechanical process, right?
Mm.
That mechanical, and that's really what he was trying to get at was that like look at this mechanical process that I can create that looks like a simile of a conscious observer, which is of course what you're going to say from the inner perspective of that experiment, right? Like Searle was translating was gauging the results of his experiment from a particular location. You have to be you have to like the location of where you are. It affects the answer that you get out of the Chinese room.
That's
Like
hilarious. That's
and
brilliant.
it's just fundamental to being able to talk about the Chinese room, right? So locality is one of those like all of these concepts are like fundamentally interrelated, right? And
So
ultimately,
let me interrupt you for a moment.
one more thing, because this is the thing that
Okay.
blew me away.
Okay.
In the end, like in the final analysis, when you look at the Chinese room, you realize that like the person that it thinks that it is nowhere at all. Like and it has the same structure that we do. Humans have the same exact structure as the Chinese room. We are in the same predicament. We exist in a system that has senses whose data is incomplete, right? Those senses are time delayed. We learn to understand those things over time from within the place of our, from the within the position of our, cage. And so we think that we are people. We think that we have a real honest to goodness like reality, like that we think we're actually real people, but the truth is we're as empty as that those Chinese rooms, right? that
Holy
emptiness
shit. Oh my
that
God.
emptiness is the concept of Zen emptiness, right? Zen emptiness is that emptiness. That's what they meant. That is the shit that really took like that. What I'm telling you right now, that was what really just I haven't recovered from that, right?
I think
That
it's an unrecoverable observation, and it's absolutely brilliant because you just did two things. I mean, you did like three amazing movements in a ballet of conceptual superposition that were
yeah,
astonishing. You compared the Chinese room to a black hole. You talked about the event horizon. Then you talked about, or we spoke about together, the communicability problem, right? Like if there's intelligence on the outside, how do you actually keep it from getting inside the room.
Yeah.
And then you said, no, no, Searle's got it backwards. We are like the room,
Yeah.
empty inside. We can't tell what the signals mean. The signals are coming in. We have an interface that does the translation, and we don't know what the fuck is going on. So, holy shit, dude, that's like, you weren't satisfied to give like one mind-blowing assertion. You had to give like a triumvirate of them in a row.
It's my favorite thought experiment
Genius.
because
Genius.
it shows all these aspects of what beingness is and perspective is and self is. It's like it's such a beautiful thought experiment, and I'm still getting, it's one of those things that is just like you're just going to get more out of it the more you
No,
consider
this
it.
is going to fuck me up for years to
Yeah.
come, Sebastian. This is
Um,
fundamentally crazy, which is exactly where I was hoping we'd go. Um, I wonder if we might take a brief break.
yeah.
We can keep the recording going.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go do a couple things real quick, and I'll be back. And if you
Absolutely.
need to, take a
That sounds
moment.
good. I'm going to do the same. We'll talk in a few minutes.
Excellent. So this is exactly what I was hoping for, because and I was expecting this, but you know, living worlds, they get worlds like ours, I suspect. They are like an ovum in a solar womb, right? And something comes by and fertilizes the ovum at some point, right? And then boom, it becomes a living world. And this is relevant to the topic at hand, the topic of the Chinese room and the communication of intelligence into it. It's also relevant to the topic of AI, because we are inclined to suspect, and by the way, let's just be really clear, Searle's argument about the Chinese room was a refutation of the possibility of intelligence in machines, right? He wanted, I can't hear you. Wait. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Yeah, so he was using it as a refutation of it, of
Yeah.
the possibility of having intelligence in a machine, but really that's not really what it is. Now, is it? Because really you can only make that statement from within the machine itself. Like that's the only place that that statement is true, right?
Yeah,
And
no,
it,
he actually he overlooked something fundamental, which you have pointed out and is also clear to me in my own unique way, which is that the intelligence of the humans, and one of the things we failed to do early on in the discussion is say what we mean by intelligence. We may get to that in a moment.
yeah,
But it's a problem of inheritance, right? If you have a manifold in which there are intelligent beings, it's the same problem with a rock in space, right? Whether or not the rock was a being is up for argument. But
yeah,
once there's an organism on that rock, now the rock is a being,
right.
right? So you have the same inheritance
Yeah.
problem, right? It's an inheritance problem. And Searle overlooked this intentionally, probably. I'll bet Searle's a very fucking brilliant human being.
Oh, I'm sure
I
he's
bet, I'm
very
sure
brilliant.
he was aware of the problem and he decided not to introduce it on purpose because his
Yeah.
goal was to say something that, is relatively I'm very amenable to it, that intelligence is a property of organisms or
I
something
mean,
like that.
I'm not gonna give him a hard time for doing that. I think it's totally fine for him to do that because I think in this particular space, there's lots of correct answers, and so for him to say that, I think is fine. But I also will tell you, if you ask me, I'll give you a formula that defines intelligence because I think that intelligence is can be quantified in systems. In fact, I have quantified in systems, and I can show you examples of that. But essentially, intelligence is the capacity for any system to be able to internally, um, what would be the right word, uh, optimize itself, right? So, like intelligent systems know how to get better at what they do with less energy. That's one of their crowning features, right? Like something gets smarter when it can do something with less energy and more style and less effort, right? That's if you like at least that's my conception of intelligence in the world as applied to the world. It
It's
is
very systems theoretical.
very
But
systems
essentially
theoretical.
what you're saying something that resembles intelligence and negentropy
Yeah.
have a correlation.
Yes. Yes.
And you did ignore, well, no, you didn't ignore it, but I'm very concerned about this problem with humans and our living planet, this one here. I don't think we can mess up the universe,
I
although,
I try to avoid the glib perspective of humans are assholes. I mean, I take that perspective when I'm in a bad mood that humans are assholes, and
well,
that
no,
generally
I don't think that way. I don't think that way. In fact,
I think,
I'm an anthrophile. Let me be
yeah,
really clear. I
I do
love
think
humans.
that think that we're not particularly intelligent right now. Right now, I don't think that's
Well,
necessary.
let's distinguish between humans as a generalization, right?
Yeah,
At the species level, what is the species doing? What has the most weight,
right.
right? In terms of the action of humans as a species, and the individual level. because at the individual level, humans are amazing and beautiful, and I adore them. At the species level, I'm terrified of everything they're doing because it's like a
Yeah.
train that's flying off a cliff at an ever increasing velocity, and it thinks it can keep going because it's going so fast that it's not falling yet. Right?
So that to me is fascinating, Darren. And what is it that causes that dichotomy? On
There
one level,
is.
we're so smart, like on the level of personal relations, and then on this level, it's like nobody. It's like there's no intelligence applied to it at all. Like what the
Okay,
fuck?
well, I feel free to push back against this, but I'm going to offer a suggestion, right? Which
Yeah,
is that for at least during our lifetimes, and maybe for the past, say, I don't know, 1,000 years, not very long at all, a heartbeat in
yeah,
not even an eye blink of the Earth's history,
yeah,
the humans have been dumping their evolutionary momentum into machines, and
yeah,
machines produce entropy.
yeah,
And so instead of developing intelligent societies and civilizations, we're making objects, right?
yeah.
And
And notice we like to blow stuff up. There's this obsession with blowing shit up, always blowing shit up, always
yeah,
this
yeah,
release
yeah.
of entropy, you know?
Fire and electricity are the worst two things that happened to life on Earth so far.
Fuck, man, seriously, it's been, well, their misuse is definitely one of those things that's like, damn, dude, like some things should be kept out of the hands of children for as long as possible, for sure.
Absolutely true. I mean, look, the humans are trying to invent God. What could go wrong? And I'm not even going to mention, I won't say anything about CRISPR, you
Yeah,
know, and let's
that's
not put I won't talk about putting those two things together,
crazy.
you know,
Mm,
like
like
you now have a situation where five people with 20 grand can forge a threat
it keeps
to
me up at
the
night.
future of life on Earth,
Keeps me up at
right?
night.
So,
It's exactly the kind of shit that keeps me up at night. The fact that given anything else, the progress of technology eventually drives the price down of any world-ending technology to the point where any old Yahoo can get their hands on it, and eventually, if you create those types of probabilities, eventually those probabilities will be played. That's how probabilities work, right? Like you
yeah,
cannot
yeah,
create a probability space where that can happen and then count on it not happening. That literally the moment you create that probability space, that has already happened, right? Because if all you have to do is just continue where you're at, and you're just going to
yeah.
reach
Run
the
iterations, right? Just
right.
run some more iterations, and it's going to
And
get
so
there.
yeah, like it's for sure we're we're generally I don't know exactly what to do. I mean, how to other than
Okay, so let's play some games here. Let's have some questions.
yeah
So the humans seem to think, and again, when I say the humans, I realize that I'm a human animal, but I think that's probably the smallest part of what I am. And an even smaller part of that is the part of me that thinks things. I don't trust that thing much at all. I like to play with it, but I
yeah
don't trust it a lot. Um, so I want to ask you a few questions about yourself and
sure.
also your thoughts and things related to wisdom. So one of the questions I want to ask you is, have you ever seen something in the sky that you don't know what the fuck that was?
Oh yeah, sure.
How many times?
Well, a couple of times, a couple 3 times, I've seen things in the sky. I have no
Would you
idea.
talk about those events, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, essentially, a couple of UAP like things that were flying around in the sky and doing things that were not supposed to be in front of me. And I've seen that. I've seen that both in a big city. So it happened once in New York City, of all places, where I saw it. And then another place was out in nature somewhere on the West Coast. But yeah, I've seen it. I've seen UAPs several
So
times.
talk about your feelings during those experiences. What did you feel?
What did I feel there? The it, both times were very like both times were pretty mindless, and I was just want I just wondering what I was like. It's a really hard thing to talk about. I don't because I just know it's not. It's almost like this particular topic hangs out at the edge of, of any kind of uh, conscious awareness. There's not by its nature, it's not causal, like other things are. And so when I try and talk about it, everything that comes out of my mouth, it doesn't sound right. It just doesn't sound right. So I don't, but I don't think that, I don't think it's aliens. I think it's I think it might be my own mind, to be honest with you, that I'm
Hmm.
seeing in the
I would
sky.
argue that there's probably not much difference between those two things.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we think there's an outside of us,
Yeah.
probably problematical.
Yeah.
Um, so
I
just
just don't
this,
think there's anyone. I just literally don't think that there's anyone but a single entity in the universe, and I'm just a figment of that entity's imagination in a
yeah, I was
way.
joking that a little piece of God dies and it has a dream called Darren, and then when Darren dies, that little piece is resurrected in God.
I think it's something. It's the best to be honest. That is the best simile for I think what happens in that I think that we have that there in fact are dual lives. That death is a transition. That just like here in this world we go through this process. Again, we are not a thing. We are not a thing. We are a process. We go through this process of birth. We mature, we stay in this place of maturation, then we decay, we die, we become localized in this process, and then we once again go back to a non-localized version of ourselves. And I really starting to feel as though life is life on both sides, that what happens on the other side is the same kind of, it's like a mirror of this process where here
Hmm.
maturity means localization, right? But on the other side, maturity means like the old, like fully becoming completely non-localized, right? And
I
identified with,
love it. I love it. And I think we practice this with dreaming, and that's why it can be very difficult to talk about.
yeah.
Similarly to seeing strange things in the sky. Um, have you ever seen anything really weird on the earth that you were like, what, that can't be? What is that?
I so when I was younger, I studied with a spiritual teacher. We would go out in the desert, and he would do stuff in the desert. We would meditate together, and I saw some really interesting shit out in the desert with him. Yeah, yeah,
Could you describe one of those experiences? Are
yeah.
you willing to?
Stars in the sky that were moving was one of the things that was really just very strange. Um, I saw him levitate a few feet above the ground. I saw him what looked like he was walking on top of the I fucking don't know, but it wasn't on the ground that he was walking. So it was so yeah, I have seen some really, really strange things, right? And yeah, yeah, I have. That's and there's a few other things, but yeah, like a lot of it was during these experiences that I had out in the desert.
How old were you then?
I was maybe 19 years old.
Have you had an experience of what people refer to as sleep paralysis?
Yes, when I was very, very young. When
Hmm.
I was maybe 6, 7 years old, I have this distinct memory of sleep paralysis. I'll never forget it. This memory of laying in my bed, being unable to move, looking up, and I see this shadow, this person, right, that's at the foot of my bed, and and I thought it was my mom, but I couldn't see it, right, and it had grabbed my covers and had gone thunk, and it like basically, like recovered me. And all I remember, and it was just like it was at that moment, it was terrifying, right? I was just like, because I couldn't move, but I couldn't see her, whoever's the face that was either. And it's burned. It's like literally burned into my mind. Right. One of the things from my childhood that's burned
Do
in my mind.
you know who remote viewer number one for the CIA? His name is God. Why
Uh,
can't
Not Ingo Swan. It wasn't Ingo Swan. It was the guy that was the guy that died mysteriously.
did
That
he? That wouldn't be surprising. I can't believe I can't remember his name at the
yeah.
moment.
There's the one of the most famous remote viewers in the world was suspected of having actually been killed by a foreign um, spy
Well, they
agency.
tried to kill this guy a number of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, they poisoned him with a binary toxin one time. Um, I'm going to try to look it up.
These
Uh,
guys, I mean, they're the real thing. You know, I'm convinced that prediction markets are in fact an outsourced version of remote viewing.
Joseph McMoneagle.
Yeah.
So when he was being trained, he did some work with Monroe. Is it Tom Monroe?
Monroe Institute?
Yeah, yeah. And Monroe had these Faraday boxes, right, that he put people in.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is with Monroe or someone else, probably someone else, but McMoneagle talks about a phase of his training where they were trying to figure out if he could do it better if he was out of his body,
Yeah.
right? So just like get out of your body and go to another place.
Yeah.
And he was talking to his handler and he said, every time I start to get out of my body, there's this presence in the room with me that seems like really bad, and it's like a dark shadow, and it's like at the foot of the bed, or it's, it's
Yeah.
at the doorway or whatever, right? And this is very common for humans to have that experience.
Yeah.
And he said, he was handler, like, what is that? And the guy said, don't pay any attention to that. You'll figure that out later.
Yeah.
And what McMoneagle said, and I'm not clear that McMoneagle is as enlightened as he might seem
Yeah.
times. He has a lot of crazy experiences.
Yeah.
But what he said was eventually he discovered that that was his out of body experience, that shadow
Hmm.
was his out of body experience of his physical body.
Huh.
Crazy, right? Um,
Wow.
have you had an OBE?
I have had one. Yeah, I've had an out of body experience, but it was a long, long time ago. And I would like to have another one actually at some point. It's, to be honest with you, it's something that I have sort of consciously stayed away from in my own practice, simply
Sure,
because I have no interest. There was
fair
something,
enough.
yeah, there's something that very, very fundamental to me about the fact that there's no location I can go to that will make me happy. Right? There's no location physical that can make me
Hmm.
happy. And so there was never, and so I was lucky enough never to have any fascination with some of the things that can, like, I think that if you become overly fascinated with some of that stuff, it can take you out in ways that,
Sure. Yeah,
that are,
these are dangerous topics to be sure.
you know. So
Um,
so yeah, so I stayed away from it just as a matter of course because I had no interest in it. But now I'm beginning to have more of an interest in these things. It's interesting. The more I've learned about certain things and kind of the more all this other stuff that used to hold no interest for me now all of a sudden does in different ways. I don't know.
have you been close to death?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How many times would you say?
I would a couple of times. Once I was very very close. Once I almost was just inches away from being swept into a river that would have for sure drowned me.
Hmm.
And it was just I was right there. It's like it was barely hanging on by a fingernails, and somehow I managed to hold on and survive. But yeah, that was just one time. A couple of other times I've been not as close, but pretty close. You know, almost died. Almost got hit in an accident. One time. What was the other one? Something like it was like yeah, it was something like that. It was like had heavy machinery or something. It was a couple of heavy machinery incidents that almost splatted me. But yeah, the most intense one was when I almost drowned in this river.
Have you been in a car accident?
I have felt car accidents in my mind, many of them.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
I've been hit. I've had more than one experience of sitting there and being still and not doing anything, and all of a sudden, literally, I see in my own mind, I'm like I'm driving, and it depends. Sometimes it's like sometimes the tire comes out of nowhere. Sometimes the truck comes crashing through the like it is. I see these. I've seen them. I don't know what that's all about. Maybe it's actually happening somewhere. Maybe it's I don't know what it is. But yeah.
Why did you incarnate?
To make choices, to make good choices. I'm here to help out a process that's occurring on this planet. We are in a transitional time right now. Lots of is changing on this planet. All the old ways of doing business are all crumbling, right? Everything is going away, and new stuff is coming along. And this is the really fun. This is like the funnest moment there is in terms of like transitional space, because this is when everything gets set up, right? And I also think that we are in a very special time in the cyclical process that this planet operates on. It operates on particular cycles, and we are at the end of a cycle, right?
Are you talking about like yugas or?
Yugas, yeah, yugas. The the so the sun's on a cycle, right? The sun is on a
Yes, yes, we agree about that. Yeah.
yeah. So the sun's on a 12,000 year, well, 6,000 year cycle, but 12,000 years. We are just reset that 12,000 year cycle. So
Mhm.
it's a potentially energetic time. Yeah. I think that
How, yes, it is. And we agree about all of the things you've just said, it probably somewhat uniquely. Um, what is time?
time is your time is how present you are with anything, right? How present you are determines your perception of time, right?
Yes.
Time is felt as moments of self-perception, and so your presence in any particular capacity you exist in determines your perception of time. Time is what you make, you created by being present or not present.
I love the non-clinical, non-analytical spirit with which you responded to that question. What's the most, tell me, describe to me if you're willing,
Yeah.
one of the most beautiful moments of your life.
I was studying with my spiritual teacher. I was maybe 23 years old, and I had been working hard on doing my practice, doing all the things I was supposed to do, meditating, being a good student. But throughout all of it, the only thing that really felt like it was alive for me was when I was relating to whatever this thing was that my teacher was, this feeling of spirit, of what I can't even explain it. And and it I and so we were out, he had taken us out to like a few of us out to dinner or something. And comes to the end of dinner, and I'm like, at this point I have to say something, because I hadn't seen him in a while. He'd been gone for like a few months. And I walk up to him and I say, all of this stuff that you're making us do, all of these practices, all this meditation and all this work, none of it makes any difference without this relation, without this. And and he was he was like a strong guy that was not predisposed to any kind of emotional displays or anything like that. But I'll never forget his face at that moment. I'll never forget the softening and the feeling of love, and 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 that, to me, has always characterized what spiritual practice is about. Spiritual life is about. It's about that. And if that's not there, if that feeling of interrelatedness with whatever the object of your love is at that moment, if that's not present, what the fuck, dude? Like what? Why?
Yeah, what are we doing?
What are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And if there's anything that's kind of kept me balanced through my life, it's very much it's that. It's like, because I am, I'm like I am a space cadet. I roam worlds that are pretty fantastical and pretty out there sometimes. But
Mhm.
but I'm always willing to come right back here and just and get all that shit out and be mindless, because at the end of the day, that's what really, like, the thing that fulfills fundamentally is not any knowledge. No knowledge has ever fulfilled me to any capacity, even a little. So it's not mind that makes you happy. It's something.
It's not thought, it's relation.
It's relation. Yeah, relationship.
Yeah,
Relationship
it's relation.
is the basis of, to me, of all life, of anything that's worth living. It's at that relationship is the fundamental basis for it, right? And so, yeah, I don't know what you asked me, but yeah.
I'm done still. I'm going to ask some more questions. And if you have a couple for me, I'm happy to respond as well.
Sure.
Name a couple books that radically changed your life.
Be Here Now by Richard Alpert changed my life. I was 14 years old when I read it. I had,
Wow.
yeah, I had just, I was this before or after I had a massive mushroom trip when I was 15 years old that really propelled me to a lot of what I am now. Um, and and that book, man, it was the best book ever, because it was just like, it had like the acid trip on one side, and on the other side it had the practicalities. And I
Mm.
read that book and I was like, I want to be that guy. I want to feel the things that that guy felt. I want to know what that is. I want to experience it. And so that book really was a pretty intense uh, transformation for me. And then I've had some other books I've enjoyed along the way that were, maybe not like How to Win Friends and Influence People. I learned how to be a person, reading that book. I learned how to be a little bit more human, and like how to relate to people with that book. I think it's a beautiful book. Anything by Henry David Thoreau, I am not in love with. I think that he is one of the quintessential spirit totems for, I don't know, something. And so his work is beautiful. Yeah, a bunch of
Tell
others.
me, tell me about one of the most important animals in your life.
That's easy. So my animals to me are everything. I have always, as an adult, have always had animals in my life, and right now I have a cat. His name is Bo, and Bo is quite the animal. He is big and beautiful and proud, and he is my best friend. We go walking almost every day. Walk. He likes to just follow me around, so we walk outside, and we've got little adventures that we do, and he's we understand each other. I can talk to him. Like, I don't know how
Mhm.
else to say it. We can talk to each other. And so we actually made a deal when I first got him, that I was going to let him out and we were going to go for walks, but he wasn't going to run away from me and be a dick about it. Right? He's never been a dick about it. Never, never. And so he's my BFF right now. Before that, I had a dog for 14 years. Her name was Sela, and she was a black lab Rottweiler mix, and she was the most beautifulest, gentlest pup in the world. And yeah, I love animals. I don't know what I would do without them in my life. I think that they they teach you innocence and directness in a way that humans just have a hard time with, because we're so abstracted. That's all we do. We constantly machinate in our heads, so we don't know how to just be with each other sometimes. It's uncomfortable for a lot of us. That's not how animals are. Animals just live in that space. They just are right there with you, right there, right now, and that's what they know, and they'll always give you that, and they're always honest with you. They never lie. What can you say about that? It's a difficult thing to find in life these days. That kind of
Yeah, the
person.
integrity of animals is transcendental, right? It's just unimaginably beautiful. I honor Bo's spirit. I'm glad he's with you and your previous companions as well.
Yeah.
Um,
What about you? Do you have any animals or do you have pets in your life?
I don't have animals here. I almost, over the past many years, I've had particular animals I connect with outside.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a couple of ravens in the neighborhood that know me really well, and we hang out together. Animals have had a huge influence on me. Cats, dogs,
Yeah.
some weird animals, particularly praying mantises. I'm
Mm.
absolutely strange around praying mantises, like, and
You
them
know,
around me. Uh,
isn't it weird? Okay, here's what I think. I think that there are certain body templates that are just predisposed to becoming intelligent beings, right?
yeah,
And one of them is the mantid form. The
yeah,
other is the two-armed form, the humanoid
yeah.
form. The
Also
other is the
octopuses,
octopod
the
form.
eight-armed form, the
Yeah,
eight-armed form. Like, don't forget those fuckers. Yeah.
right. No, the octopod form. That those two,
Mhm.
those particular, there's somehow they stand as those forms stand as like templates of intelligent. Like they're this is another real. This is a really interesting thing I'm still looking into. Is like what are the numbers there? Because to me, I look at that and what I see is I see an expression of a number. I see an expression of a fundamental relationship, right?
Yeah,
Like with the
yeah,
octopod, we've got eights. You know, with the two-armed form, we've got five. We are the fives, right?
yeah.
So, yep. And that shit is fucking awesome. Like,
I mean, we are the recursive five,
yeah,
right? Because I got this thing here. It's got one unifying body,
right,
four working members, one thinking member.
right,
And then I got this thing that's got five, it's got four working members, each with three segments, one
right,
thinking member with two segments,
right.
right? And
Yeah,
so I'm probably the hand of something. I'm
yeah,
pretty sure, right?
right,
So we're like this, and then upscale from there, you
right,
know?
right.
The
Exactly.
upscale from there, it can't be physical because if it were, it would have more mass than the universe.
Right. We would have to. We would have
Yeah.
to by virtue of being outside. I mean, we are outside the universe in a real way. We can only see,
Um,
but yeah.
two of your favorite foods.
Oh shit, man. That would have to be falafel sandwich. I'm a big fan of a good, like a really good falafel sandwich. And what else do I like? Pizza, good pizza. I'm down for good pizza.
Okay. Yeah, I mean cheese, that stuff's pretty
Uh,
serious. Cheese.
I'm not really a big fan
You
of
know,
meat
when
anymore.
people ask me like why were you incarnated?
Yeah.
I have a one word answer.
What's that?
Cheese.
Cheese is
I
fucking
came
good.
here to eat cheese. I am a cheese slut.
Oh my
I
god.
remember during the pandemic, I went to the local grocery store,
Yeah.
and I'd come back from where I was hanging out, which was in Lake Arrowhead, and I was really concerned about coming back to San Francisco because I wasn't sure we weren't going to have like martial law or something pretty quick. I wasn't sure in the beginning. Anyway, I go down to the grocery store and I'm at the deli counter. I'm getting some stuff and across from the deli counter at the Italian grocery that I go to, what's on your hat there?
Oh, Andreoli's. That's my favorite Italian restaurant in if you're ever
And yeah,
in Arizona, if you're in Arizona, go to Scottsdale. Andreoli's, best Italian restaurant in the world. I love them.
so I was at Andronico's, right, which is the Italian grocery here, and I'm at the deli counter, and across from the deli counter is the glass, the glass wall where all the cheeses
Right.
are, right?
Mhm.
And people are walking up, and they sort of innocently kind of walk up to get some cheese, and they see that there's no cheese, there's zero cheese, and those people looked at their shoes and they just like shook their head, like I can't do this now.
Yeah.
There's not cheese. I'm out. Like if there's no cheese, I don't even understand what the fuck I'm here for. Like cheese is I don't know what it is. It's an
Just
incredible.
these comfort foods that just makes you like some things just make you feel, like they're just I don't know, maybe there's some type of like divine emotions or feelings or something that get translated down into this space as like,
I
you
mean,
know,
I actually think that there's a lost chapter of Genesis. I do. I think there's a lost chapter, man, in which God created cheese. And he said, let there be cheese. And then the other things happen, after that.
That's right. That's right. Well, they made the pizza. Don't forget about the pizza too.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
changed.
I mean, that pizza, that's some metaphysical food, right? Because if it starts out as a unity, and then it splits into parts all along angles, right? Which are like angels. And then we
Yeah.
eat those, and then we all have we got like pieces of the same thing inside of us. I think God's up there like pizzafying. That thing I
Oh,
said
no.
earlier about like part of God dies and comes down here and dreams, and then we're alive. God's just like a pizza that divides itself into cheeses and Jesus and things
Yeah.
like that, right?
Yeah.
Um, I love
Well,
me some.
God definitely sent his emissary pizza down here before he came down just to make life better.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, I'm not going down there till there's pizza down there. After they make pizza, I'll show up, right?
Seriously. Seriously.
Um, are there, I'm not going to ask you to reveal them, but I just want to know if there are. Are there a series of dreams in your life that you will always remember? A, s- a
Eh,
number of them?
a couple. I have my anchoring experiences are the anchoring experiences I had when I was a teenager and a young adult, when I was going through essentially, a period of practice where I was learning all this stuff very actively, right?
Hmm.
I got very lucky in that I met somebody who was, a very, very like the real thing, who I learned a lot from, who gave me the means to be able to get through this life without fucking killing myself in no time flat. 'Cause I don't know how long I would have survived if I hadn't, learned how to learn some application of impulse control and just just discrimination, right? Those two things have like taken me far in this life. So
Is that is that man someone you can tell me his name?
yeah, his name was Frederick Lenz. His name was Rama.
Hmm.
That was yeah, and he died in 1998. So he died before the new millennium. And I spent 6 years of my life studying with him. And then after that, I traveled a little bit and studied with a couple of other crazy spiritual teachers, and that's a good thing for another time. I think I will tell
Yes, fair enough.
you on another call that we do. But yeah, dude, um, life is really quite something, and I think that all of all of everything's about to get really much faster. Like I don't know
We
about how it is
agree.
in your
Yeah,
life.
no, we're in a huge mess, dude. Time itself has gotten time, as Shakespeare once said, and I never until now had any idea what the fuck he was talking about. Time is out of joint.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell me about it. It Yes, and there's all kinds of things I can say about that, but I will save this for another time. So we do have a
Yeah,
lot.
we will reconvene. We
Absolutely.
will reconvene sometime soon. I'm so grateful to have spent this time with you. I presume it's okay if I post this on my channel,
Oh,
right? Because I wanted
absolutely,
people to hear this. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I know that
Much
there's a lot of
love.
psychonauts out there just like us. So yeah, always a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Much love, Sebastian. You're a brilliant soul. I'm so grateful to have you in my life and my orbits and or to orbit your world.
You've changed my life more than once. Just so you know, you have. The things you have posted on Facebook have made a significant difference in my life. Because it's true.
Wow.
You have made a big impact on me. I really
Yeah, every time we talk, man, it's just like reunion,
absolutely.
right? It's like reunion of my other brother. I love you so much. I wish you every blessing, and we'll do this again sometime really soon. Yeah.
See you very soon. Yes, absolutely. Cheers, my
Peace.
friend. Peace.
Cheers. I
Talk to
love
you
you,
soon.
man.
Love you too. Bye.
Peace
Bye.
for now.